Hello and welcome to the Center for Fostering Success Best Practice, Best Fit webinar series. Whoops. I'm Carrie Ward and I am Program Coordinator for Fostering Success Michigan. Before we get started, I'd like to say a quick thank you to our funders, Western Michigan University, the Havermill Foundation, and the Kresge Foundation for supporting all of our work. Today on our series, we are going to be presenting a webinar called Fostering Inclusion, the implementation of a faculty staff mentor program for college-going foster youth. I'd like to introduce the presenters. Angela Hoffman is a learner, educator, and scholar practitioner, currently serving as the Assistant Director of Orientation Programs at Michigan Technological University. Angela experienced foster care as a youth and has committed her educational and personal pursuits to increasing post-secondary access and degree attainment for students who do not experience the support of a secure family network. She previously served as a fostering success coach at the University of Michigan, providing holistic support to students with experience in foster care, and created the structure of the Blaven Mentor Program. Angela is pursuing her PhD in higher education leadership through Colorado State University and plans to focus her dissertation on best practices for supporting students with experience in foster care. Blair Tinker currently works on student retention initiatives in the Center of Engineering Diversity and Outreach within the University of Michigan's College of Engineering. Prior to this transition, she was the mentor program coordinator and a campus coach with the Blaven Scholars Program for 2 years. Blair's strengths in her current and past roles come from her experiences with specialized student populations in need of developing successful life skills and strategies. And I do want to mention Blair was unable to join us today, but we do want to highlight that she was a great contributor to the webinar. Jamie Bennett, LMSW ACC, is an academic success coordinator at the University of South Florida in St. Petersburg. She holds a bachelor's and master's degree in social work, as well as a clinical license in social work and a coaching certification through the International Coach Federation. As an alumna of foster care, Jamie's professional work is dedicated to increasing educational success among college students from foster care. She has coached dozens of students from foster care and led the development of the Fostering Success Coach Training at Western Michigan University, which has provided training to over 300 education and child welfare professionals in several states. Jamie is currently pursuing a doctoral degree in program development and educational innovation from the University of South Florida. Dr. Kizzy Lopez has a bachelor's degree in interdisciplinary studies, master's in educational counseling, and a doctoral degree in higher education leadership from Azusa Pacific University. She is the founding and current coordinator of the Renaissance Scholars Program, which supports students who experience foster care or unaccompanied homeless youth who are attending California State University, Fresno State. Dr. Lopez has over 10 years of experience in higher education with designing services for underrepresented student populations, including students with first-generation, low-income involvement with foster care and homeless backgrounds. Her passion is fueled by her involvement as a child in the foster care system and personal experience with homelessness while attending community college. She is personally dedicated to improving practices and systems for unaccompanied youth pursuing their educational goals. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Angela Hoffman, who will be starting the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Carrie, for that wonderful introduction. So today we'll get started with sharing with you a little bit about how we'll spend our time together today. For our learning outcomes, we're going to spend some time talking about institutional policies and procedures that are embedded in family privilege and a little bit about that foster care to college experience. And then Jamie will address a bit about identifying some exposure gaps in the experiences of students on campus. And then Kizzy and I will bring it home with learning how to implement a faculty staff mentor model to mitigate exposure gaps and family privilege on campuses. So to kick us off, one of the things that can be helpful is to understand a little bit about kind of what the numbers are that we're talking about and what that experience is for our young people with experience in care. So what you see in front of you right now is kind of a blank pipeline. You might notice that there's some numbers missing here. So I like to start out with thinking to yourself what you think the numbers might be here. So over blank of youth from foster care aspire to go to college. So how many, what percentage of youth from foster care do you think aspire to go to college? And so if we were to actually translate that to a pipeline, what percent do you think graduate from high school, enroll in college, and earn a bachelor's degree? And this can be helpful just to check a little bit of maybe your own assumptions or thoughts maybe about this population and where some of the breaks in that pipeline might be. And now we'll actually give you the answers. So over 80% of youth with experience in foster care aspire to go to college. And there's a few different studies that share a stat around that area. I would argue that that percentage might even be higher than 80% when we start thinking about, okay, 80% aspire. How many really even know that college is an option and really see that as a possibility? That percentage may actually be much higher than that. Now, if we were to take 100 students with experience in foster care, we would find that only about 50 graduate from high school, only about 20 enroll in college, and there's several different studies out there with some stats on the final figure. Somewhere between 2 and 5%, or 2 to 5 out of 100 would actually earn a bachelor's degree. So looking at this, we can see there's some pretty clear breaks within the pipeline. Not only are we missing getting folks from high school to college, but actually seeing that through to graduation. And there's a few different reasons for that. One of which is navigating kind of that foster care to college experience is pretty complex. And so here we can see if we were to take the general college student experience, which is the diagram you'll see on the left-hand side, you would have a student navigating all the different aspects of campus life, navigating the complexities of financial aid, filling out the FAFSA, getting the different requested forms in, navigating college admissions, family and friends in the process of maybe leaving to go to college, moving in, and then figuring out maybe on-campus housing. Well, you add some different layers to that when a student has experienced time in foster care or homelessness, and that's a piece of the diagram that we see on the right. And this really actually just focuses on the other systems that students with experience in foster care are navigating. So maybe they're navigating really specific housing assistance or having to live within a specific situation in order to maintain maybe funding or support. And so having to navigate that system, maybe navigating their health care. Maybe they still have a caseworker through the Department of Health and Human Services. And so the diagram on the right also doesn't even begin to address some of the actual experiential components of maybe continued trauma that maybe a young person might still be working through or overcoming, or different skills they might be building. But we can see here just how complicated this can be when we overlap these things. So when we overlap college and experience in foster care and see the complexity of all these different pieces that a young person might be experiencing. So many students with experience in foster care have to navigate all these different systems just to access higher education, let alone achieve success. And Wendy Whiting-Blom has a quote here that I think really kind of summarizes and problematizes why this experience can be pretty difficult. Wendy says, "It's a curious reality that some of society's most vulnerable youth, those who have suffered maybe abuse, neglect, maybe have never known consistent, permanent, nurturing adult relationships, are asked to be self-sufficient at a time when many other youth might be receiving parental support in college or maybe experimenting with first jobs within the confines of a family." One thing that I do like to point out with this quote is while it can be a helpful way to kind of summarize what the experience in care might be, it's also not just young people with experience in foster care that might be navigating some of these challenges without family support. There's many other student populations that also can benefit from mentoring programs and also don't experience family support. So I think about, maybe our international student population can't just pick up the phone and maybe call mom or dad for that support. Or maybe students that are undocumented themselves or have family members who are undocumented. Maybe their folks can't join them for graduation because access to public transportation, getting on a plane, is maybe challenging. There's different ways that this shows up. And I also think it's important to highlight that some young people with experience in care do have permanent nurturing adult relationships. There are some different complexities there, but this quote can kind of help summarize what the experience may be and some of those challenges. So what this really gets down to is you hear me saying things like students that don't have stable family support. And there's actually a word for that. And so that word is family privilege. And so family privilege was coined by John Cita back in 2001 to describe those often unnoticed benefits that stem from being the member of a stable family. And this shows up in a lot of different ways on our college campuses and kind of throughout our world in general. There's an expectation that students have family support while in college, that if a student gets a bad grade on a test and they want to lament that they're going to have a stable family adult or someone in their life that they can call and get support from. It's going to be okay. That's all right. You'll do better next time. And that's not actually the case for all of our students, again, for a variety of those different reasons that we talked about. Also help with navigating those different systems we talked about, navigating the systems of higher ed, navigating the systems of foster care. You know, if there's a problem with financial aid, our institutions kind of assume that, students can call up their folks, their parents, and talk about that and maybe get some assistance. You need to go to the financial aid office. Here's how you do that. Here's how you make that phone call or send that email. And those are not actually supports that many of our students have or skills that some of our students have yet by nature of not having that family support. So Jamie is going to share a little bit about how family privilege ties into exposure gaps when it comes to some of those skills, knowledge, and awareness.
Thanks, Angela. So I want to take us on a little bit of a deeper dive in thinking about this idea of family privilege and how it impacts young people leaving foster care who might lack family privilege once they arrive to the college setting and go through the transition to young adulthood. So we understand, we're beginning to understand more about family privilege. And one of the things I want to share with you today is how family privilege seems to serve as a foundation for normal developmental experiences throughout childhood. Okay? And that these normal developmental experiences lead to really crucial pieces of knowledge, awareness, and skill that help prepare young people for college, to navigate the system of college, and to navigate the transition to young adulthood. So if we think about this as kind of a journey, a road from birth into young adulthood, in a typical, and I say that in a very generalized way, in typical childhood development, we can kind of think of that road being paved with family privilege. Okay, so these normal, developmentally appropriate and culturally appropriate milestones that experiences that young people will have during growing up allow them to reach milestones such as learning how to cope with disappointment, learning how to ask for help, learning how to manage your laundry or a bank account or interview for your first job. So all of these things happen with the support of family or with the foundation of family privilege. The other thing that happens when you have family privilege in typical childhood is that you have the opportunity to fail and take safe risks. For example, a young person who's learning to drive, if they accidentally have a fender bender, there's usually parental support to help navigate what comes along with all of that. How do we get the car fixed? Those kinds of things. Young people that do not have family privilege growing up may miss those opportunities. So what does that look like and how do we understand that? So what I think is really important to know about what we call exposure gaps, which is what we're looking at here, is that exposure gaps are not remedial in the sense that the young people who lack family privilege can't learn or aren't able to learn the skills that they're missing once they arrive to the young adulthood college setting. It's simply that they haven't had the experiences that allow them to develop those knowledge and awareness and skill pieces. And so to me, it's important to think of those as gaps, but gaps that we can do something about. Okay, so these gaps, what we understand is they come from lack of family privilege. They come from missing typical childhood experiences, maybe from instability in housing or in relationships, which we know is a common condition of being in foster care, and really from a condition for some of our young people in foster care where failing equals danger. You can't accidentally have a fender bender and recover from it easily. You can't forget how to pay a bill and have someone to back you up. It can actually have very serious ramifications. So in thinking about mentoring programs, it's important to know that your mentoring program can help to address some of these exposure gaps. And what I always like to say is that professionals and mentors in some sense won't necessarily repave that road, okay? And that's okay. You can bridge the gaps, okay? And bridging the exposure gaps really looks like creating experiences that help the young people learn the missing knowledge, awareness, and skills that may have resulted from lack of family privilege. And so some of my best practices in this I always like to offer people is to teach, don't just tell. We have a habit sometimes in higher education where we think that if we tell a young person how to address a financial aid issue or how to speak with a professor, that they will automatically know how to do this. Not always the case, and especially if you didn't learn really foundational skills such as asking for help or dealing with a stressful conversation during your growing up years. Okay, so we want to teach through these experiences and maybe even accompany our young people on these experiences so that we can help bridge those gaps. We always want to check in versus assuming that young people know how to do certain things. And really think about building those foundational knowledge, awareness, and skill pieces through intentional interactions with young people. And your mentors can be trained and learn how to do this with the young people that they'll be working with in your mentoring program. So you can see here, don't just tell, teach. I want to leave you with that. Family privilege is, it's a complex issue. It's an emerging issue in the research. We are learning a lot about it still. But what I feel really certain about is that professionals and mentors that maybe see youth a few hours a month aren't going to fully replace that family privilege. But we can help young people build natural support networks, build their skills and knowledge and awareness so that they can build natural support networks that can address that lack of family privilege. So with that, I want to shift us and turn it back over to Angela and to Kizzy to start kind of the conversation about the actual phases of implementing a mentoring program. And you're going to hear two examples of mentoring programs that are similar in some ways and different. One at the University of Michigan within the Blavin Scholars Program, and then Kizzy will be talking about her initiative at Fresno State. I turn it back over to you, Angela.
Great, thank you, Jamie. So I just want to do a shout out again to our colleague Blair. These are primarily some of her slides that she developed and created about her work with the University of Michigan Blavin Scholars Program. Blair and I have a fantastic colleague relationship as we actually both held the same role at the University of Michigan with the mentoring program, just at different times. So I kind of launched the mentoring program and then changed roles in life. And Blair came in and became the campus coach and mentor program coordinator there for a period of time and moved the work forward. So it's really nice to be able to share the development of how a mentor program can take shape over time. So first, we're going to tackle a little bit about why mentoring. And I think Jamie covered really a lot of this during the exposure gaps piece of a lot of youth and young people say that they have too few adults that they can rely on, and particularly young people with experience in care or students that don't experience that traditional family support. And so how can we kind of mitigate that and add a natural support network there? And so mentors is a way to cultivate that natural support network. And ideally, when a young person has a mentor, it's not just that single mentor either. That mentor is helping them further expand their natural networks and that social support by introducing them to other supportive adults. And that's really the beauty of mentoring. And then providing opportunities to have some of those safe experiences that Jamie talked about, opportunities to build that social capital, building those connections and learning, knowledge, awareness, and skills that will help launch to and through college and into adulthood. And then also mentoring really provides different but often synergistic support along with program staff support. And so I know this can be a pretty common question of, all right, maybe I am a single program coordinator for a program that supports young people in foster care, or maybe a first-gen student program. How do I make time to then also create a mentor program on top of that? But developing a mentor program can actually help manage some of that workload and better support students and really provide additional helpful support through that one-on-one relationship that a mentor would have with their student that looks different from maybe a coaching or staff-student relationship. So moving forward, when we talk about launching a mentor program, you can kind of think about it in a few different phases. And so there's different ways to approach this work, certainly, and you will see Kizzy and I share a little bit of some of the differences between the programs and approaches. But really, there's some things to think about before kind of formally launching. One is, what sort of program structure do you want to have for your mentoring program? One of my recommendations certainly is to have some elements of holistic support, so not just focusing maybe solely on academics, but allowing there to be support maybe around career areas or around social emotional support, some of that skill building, opening a bank account, addressing some of those other needs that filter into our students being academically successful. At the University of Michigan, we used the 7 life domains that were honed in by Casey Family Programs and then further created into the model that you see in front of you on the right by Fostering Success Michigan. And so that model really puts education and academics at the center. That's the core reason of why our students are on our college campuses. So that is the kind of core thing we want to support. But we also want to make sure that through our student-staff relationships and also in those mentoring relationships, that all these other areas are being addressed as well, that students are getting involved, maybe on the campus community experience. So we call that the University of Michigan community experience in this case. We want to focus a little bit on physical and mental health and kind of addressing things as they come up, but also building skills in advance. And then having a student-centered approach as well, so getting feedback from the students you're working with. What do they think they want from a mentoring relationship? As we went about creating the program and matching students, there were students that were on that kind of spectrum of support of, I don't know what I want to do with my career yet. I don't really want a career mentor. I want just general support. And then we had other students that were very clear about what they wanted to do. And, I'd really love to have a mentor within the law school or within the medical school or within my other chosen profession. And so we would try to match mentors in that way. And then finalizing a proposed budget and securing funding, if any. I think that a common kind of conception is that you need to have a budget to have a mentor program, and that's not necessarily the case. So with the University of Michigan Blaven Scholars Mentor Program, we do provide occasional food at events. Mentors and students alike love food. So if you have the capacity to do that, certainly a lot of community can be built around coming together around food. There's also some coffee kind of gift certificates for some of the initial meetups. But our mentors and our students are not in this for the free food or the funding that they're getting from this, the free coffees. They're in it for the connection. And so you can do these things without having a budget. And you also may find that there's organizations in your community that might be willing to even donate a few coffee coupons to have some of those meetups and help defray some of those costs. But there certainly are budget neutral ways to do this. And then you'll want to create some sort of application or interest process, some way to track, who wants to be a mentor, and do some additional and initial vetting of why folks want to be a mentor and what are your mentees looking for as well. So you may have some sort of application or interest process for both populations, one for mentors, one for mentees. And then going about recruiting your mentors, and then preparing and conducting training. And Kizzy, did you want to offer any thoughts around budget or program structure?
No, not on this slide. I think as we move further along, there are some areas where I can contribute a little more, particularly around recruiting. So yeah, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, great. I'll be sure to check back in with you. So in terms of mentor recruitment, this is another area where certainly get a lot of common questions. And so there's oftentimes questions of, well, the faculty or staff or our community members are very busy. Do they really have time to contribute? Are they willing to share their time with our students? And I will say a resounding yes, that we have found that faculty, staff, community members, they care about our students and they want to contribute. Sometimes they just don't even know that we have students with these experiences on our campus. And so it can be so powerful to spread that awareness by even having a mentor program, having flyers about it, and sharing that with folks so that they know that our students exist. And in terms of launching the mentor program, initially how I would have approached it during my time with the Blaven program was relying a lot on those existing networks that I had. So staff and faculty that were within my networks that were aware of the program and had maybe indicated, well, what can I do? How can I help? And reaching back out and saying, well, now we actually have this mentor program we're starting. Are you interested? Here's what this entails. Having a one-pager document about your program can be helpful, and then using that as a way to shape conversations, but it gives folks something tangible to take away, gives them some time to maybe ponder if it's the right fit for them. So we outlined a little bit about our program, what we offer students, a little bit about that educational pipeline, what are the challenges, and hey, here's how you can help. You can apply to be a mentor. Getting in spaces where you can share about these opportunities. So getting your campus leadership on board can be a huge resource, and getting leadership in academic departments, deans, so that they can recommend this as an opportunity to their staff and faculty that might have an interest and it might be a fit for. So that was kind of wave one of recruiting. And then this is something that Blair really took to the next level as she took on the role. She did a lot of assessment with the program, and you can see on the right-hand side one of the pieces that she created that has a lot of the assessment figures and really brings home the impact of the mentor program. So faculty and staff and community members want to sign up for things that they know that they're going to be able to make a difference. And she was really able to bring that home and also include some quotes from scholars too. And then mentor training. You certainly will want to train your mentors. That is a really important piece, and including, again, student voice and student experience in that can be very helpful. So providing an overview. And again, if you're looking at doing a mentor training that's maybe not specific to young people in foster care, whatever the population is, providing some general experiences, but also highlighting that experiences can be very nuanced as well. And it's not a one-size-fits-all experience, nor is any mentor relationship going to be identical to another mentor relationship. And actually here in our photo on the right, you can see a student panel that's presenting at mentor training, and so bringing in that student voice. We certainly talked about the program overview and expectations, and then did a lot of time on trauma-informed mentoring. And I know that this is something that Kizzy's program focuses on as well. And then establishing trust and boundaries in relationships can help both students and the mentors feel confident going into that relationship and help set a relationship up for success. So we would talk a lot about how to do those things, and then how to address exposure gaps, how to build knowledge, awareness, and skills in some of the common areas where students may need that support in. Kizzy, would you mind sharing a little bit about your trauma-informed mentor training that you do?
Yeah, thanks for that. So I wanted to add to your previous slide in terms of recruitment. We also include community members in addition to faculty and staff on our campus, just because we found that there may be donors or partners with our program that also have a lot to give. So we have expanded our mentoring program to faculty, staff, and community members, which actually ties into the mentor training. Some of our community members are maybe social workers in the field at different nonprofits or in the county, and while they serve as mentors, they also come to our mentor training and help facilitate parts of the trainings, right, because they're experts in the field. And so some components of our trauma-informed mentoring are two-part. We have someone who has a doctoral degree in psychology, and she comes in and talks about the impact of trauma on the brain. Then we also have a social work practitioner who works with young people from foster care, and she does a part two of the trauma-informed care and or mentoring and talks about the social emotional impact of trauma on the students. And then I will come in and talk about practices and techniques and strategies to support the young person who may be experiencing trauma or may be triggered sometimes during the relationship or is having difficulty around developing trust. And so help preparing our mentors ahead of time to be prepared to interface with some of those challenges that they might experience working with a young person who has experienced trauma. So we really focus a lot on that. And another piece for us is we do use a short film called Removed to demonstrate the experience of young people in foster care. So that way the young people in our program are not maybe talking about their own experience, but the mentors can still get some sense of what it's like. So we do that so that way students don't necessarily feel put on the spot, but it does give the mentors a sense of what that experience is like if they have never worked with youth from foster care before.
Thank you for sharing, Kizzy. And yes, the Removed video is a really great resource. So if you just type into any search engine, Removed, you can find that as a resource for this training and certainly for other things as well to kind of help highlight what that experience is. Great. So phase 2 of the mentor, kind of implementing a mentor program, would be moving forward with your mentor matching. So conducting mentor matching, there's several different ways to go about mentor matching, and different programs do it differently for different reasons. Sometimes it's a staff person that's kind of doing the matching based off of the application materials that they have from maybe the student mentee and from the mentor, and kind of seeing based on interests and fit and things they want to maybe do for fun together or overlapping career focus areas, doing a match. Other programs might provide a binder of all the different applications to the student mentee, and they can kind of filter through and pick a few that they maybe want to meet and test out or be matched with officially. And then, you know, at the University of Michigan, we really tried to implement that student voice piece. And one of the ways that we did that is we do matching in all those ways that we discussed, if that has to happen that way. But we use a speed match initially as a way to kind of bulk match students when they come in. So many of our students come in as kind of a cohort at the start of the year, new students joining the program. And so we have a speed match event where folks are able to get to know one another. So we have all the mentors that are presently available to be matched attend, and all of the students that are available to have a mentor as well attend. And they kind of filter through for about 4 or 5 minutes chatting. There's some suggested questions on the table. And it's not something that many students have done before. And so kind of going in, they're not maybe sure what to expect. We do some preparation about what to expect, what sort of questions, you know, do you want to ask a potential mentor to get a sense of if it's a fit. And it was pretty amazing to see that transformation by the end of the event and seeing students say, well, gosh, you know, there were this many staff, faculty, people in the room that care about me. Wait, these people actually know that I exist on this campus. They know that there's young people with experience in foster care, and they don't just know, but they care so much that they want to be here and help serve as a mentor. And that was kind of a light switch moment for many students of, wow, you know, I can share this experience and be supported, and that there are folks that want to help. And so maybe I don't even want this person to be my mentor, but I met a great contact in study abroad, and I know I'm going to go to them now when I want to study abroad in the future because I've met them, they know my experience or pieces of my experience, and so I trust them to help me. And so it helps build that larger network. And then students have the ability to kind of say, oh, this is my top pick or my top few, and then staff kind of help sort through from there and conduct the matching. And then, of course, doing ongoing training for the mentors. A one-day, half-day training is what the University of Michigan does in terms of length, but that's not enough, and we know that. We know that there's going to be ongoing kind of concerns or needs that pop up or common kind of challenges within a mentoring relationship that we want to be able to address over time. And so that's where the ongoing trainings or mentor meetings happen. And we allow mentors to say, here's the key areas that I want to learn about right now. Here's kind of what I'm experiencing with my student as they prepare to maybe figure out where they're going for break. Maybe that is back home to some sort of home environment, or maybe it's trying to be on campus. How do I support them through the holidays? Those are all different things. Or how do I support them leading up to graduation? that we would address through ongoing training. And then supporting those mentor matches, the staff person, the mentor, and the mentee, in the case of the Blaven program, kind of become a little triad and working to support that student. And so the staff person is a member of that relationship in a sense. They're not showing up to all their different individual one-on-one hangouts, but they're staying in the loop of what's happening and checking in with both the student and the mentor to see how things are going. And then building that larger community, University of Michigan holds a few different events where all the mentors and mentees attend. And so again, you can build that larger social network of, hey, it doesn't have to just be the staff coordinator for the program. It doesn't have to just be your mentor. There are all these folks here that are here to help support and also build community among the student scholars during that time as well. So we talked a little bit about mentor matches. But here you can kind of see the speed match in action. You can see folks having some good conversation and connecting a little bit more around particular interests. And then we do have program-directed matches as needed, where there's a binder of all the eligible mentors available. If someone decides not to participate in this particular event, or maybe a relationship doesn't work out and they need to be rematched at a later point in time. But again, it really brings the opportunity for mentor and mentee feedback. So they can both say, here's kind of who I felt the connection with, and here's maybe, if there is anyone that maybe isn't a good fit, they can share that privately with the staff. And we have a mentor match here. So this is Tori and Heidi, and they were matched through the speed match event. And so this is a mentor match that Blair would have assisted with during her time. And they've talked about their experience with the mentor match. And Heidi would talk about, kind of going into the mentor match, not really being sure what to expect as a college student, never really having speed matched or speed dated before. And then Tori talks about kind of her, nerves maybe as a mentor, but how once they were in that moment, meeting everyone was really nice. Like, gosh, I could feel a connection with a lot of these people. But when Tori and Heidi sat down, they're like, we knew it was it. Like, I wanted to go back and keep talking to this person. And that was the sign of, hey, maybe we should dig a little more into this. Maybe this is my mentor. And then being able to connect more, we do a food social afterwards. That's something that Blair has added over the evolution of this mentor match process to allow the folks a little more time to chat after the speed match, so they're not just restricted to 5 minutes, and can allow that kind of connection to flow a little more organically. And then they did end up getting matched, and they'll talk about the different activities they do together. Their relationship is a little more focused on social emotional support, and so talking about getting together for Halloween and carving pumpkins and spending time gathering kind of in collective community. So again, for ongoing mentor support, having those mentor meetings to address timely topics as they come up, as you're noticing things as a staff person or as you're checking in with mentors and students and noticing some themes. We also do a mentor newsletter to get some key points out about once a semester, and also highlight some of our mentor matches and the things that they do for fun to give folks ideas of how to move their relationship forward. And then the staff person is an ongoing contact for those mentors and mentees, like we talked about, that triad relationship. So lastly, our last phase here is actually implementing the wrapping up of their relationships and implementing an assessment program. And so this is something that can be easily missed with actually assessing what's kind of happening. And maybe this is something that you're implementing not right away. You just want to launch your program maybe first, and that's okay. And then in this case, when Blair started and I had left, she really took the assessment piece and took it on to the next level, and also did a little bit more about how do we conclude relationships. So when a student is graduating, how do we kind of wrap that up and say, okay, what are your plans for continued contact? Maybe you're going to stay in touch, and that's great. Or maybe that's just not feasible for you. You're not someone that does maybe long distance relationships, and helping set some expectations and boundaries around that everyone can feel comfortable with. Or maybe a relationship doesn't work out, and so finding ways to kindly end that relationship to be able to move forward with identifying a new mentor in the future, or a new mentee for that mentor in the future. So I'll share with you some of the assessment results from the Blaven Scholars Program, and this was really Blair's focus area during her time there, and so all of this assessment project is really her work, and want to be sure to highlight that. But just tossing out, some of the importance of a mentor program. We talked about young people oftentimes sharing that they don't feel like they have enough people to count on for support. And one of the neat things with this is many of our students did say that as a result of the mentor program, they felt that they had people to help them out. And then there were some that were already well supported. So we talked about not making some of those assumptions too, that, oh, well, because you have this experience, you must not have support. That isn't true for all of our students. There's some that said, I was fine to begin with, and that's great too. We're hopefully just adding to that network. So feeling like there's more options for the future, kind of expanding those horizons, getting connected with more campus resources, community resources, and just thinking about things differently. We can see here that there's some strength in not everyone has to like the same things. And I just think that that's really neat. So me and my mentor like to do a lot of the same things. We see that there's, for some, the majority, that that's very true. But there's also 30% where they didn't necessarily have a ton of overlapping interests, but that was okay. There were other pieces of that relationship and that dynamic that was a fit. So it's important to, again, allow students to have some voice in who their mentor is going to be. Because if we were just picking based on common interests, we may not actually pick the right person for them, depending on kind of what their preferences are and what they want from a relationship. And then my mentor almost always asks me what I want to do. And you can see that for many of the students that this was the case, and that mentors were also willing to maybe try some new things that wasn't within their initial interest area, but they were willing to do what the student wanted to do. And so having that flexibility is important for the mentors too, and having that conversation as you're pitching your mentor program to folks. So when I'm with my mentor, I feel significant. That just, looking at those numbers is so special and so exciting to me, that the vast majority of students felt special, felt significant. Again, mentors and staff folks, we're not going to replace the experience of a family, but we are expanding those social networks and that support. And I think that this really speaks to that. And then when I'm with my mentor, I feel happy and supported. Those things are just so important. So a few pieces of narrative from our students in terms of messages they wanted to share with their mentor. You're doing a great job. You're helping me out a lot. You've changed my whole life and made my college transition one for the books. And I know we don't have that much in common, but I appreciate we can always find a happy medium and have fun together. So these are great things, as you do start collecting assessment, and this speaks to the importance of doing some of that because it gives you great tools to be able to share your program with other folks and to be able to recruit your mentors moving forward by saying, this is the impact you're having. Here's how our students feel about this program. So thank you, and I'm going to toss it over to Kizzy, who's going to share a little bit more about her program and then also the assessment that she's been doing with her mentor program.
So to add to Blair's work, I selected a quote from our actual mentor. She was able to provide quotes from the mentees, and so I thought it would be helpful to get a quote from our mentors. And so one of our mentors mentioned, I really appreciate the training that was held at the beginning of the semester that informed us of the possible triggers that could potentially create barriers in our communication and rapport building with our mentee. I felt that it gave me a lot more to be mindful of as I strive to be that leader, extended family, and trusted point of contact for my mentee. Thank you. You can see that this mentor really appreciated the training, and it was helpful for them in terms of providing a strong foundation and preparing them to interact with their mentee. And so with that, we'll go to the next slides with regard to some of our assessment.
All right, this is Jamie. I seem to have lost control. Carrie, if you could toss it back over to me, I'll flip to the next slide.
I think you've got it now.
Okay, Thanks. There we go. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Part of the assessment plan that we do at Fresno State with our mentoring program, we do a mid-year evaluation and an end-of-year assessment with numerous questions. But for the purpose of this webinar, I selected just a few questions to kind of highlight some of the outcomes. And so this one looks at the overall quality of the program. Was it good? Did people feel like the quality of the program was good and worked for them? And so we had 30 respondents, mixed of mentor and mentees, and you can see that 86% of the participants said that they strongly agreed that the quality of the mentoring program was good. So we'll go to the next slide. Did the mentoring program have a meaningful impact? And you can see here, again, a large percentage of the participants felt that the program had a meaningful impact in their experience. Next slide. If we can go to the next slide.
Carrie, can you flip to the next slide, please?
Sure.
And then one of the last questions that we asked was a mentoring program useful for the students? Again, you'll see a large percentage of the students said that this mentoring program was useful for them and did have an impact. And so we're very pleased with the outcome and the impact that this has had both with the mentees and the mentors. One of the things that we noticed with our mentoring program over the past 2 years, we're finishing up our second year, we do track the frequency of when mentoring pairs meet, and we notice the connection between those pairs who met more frequently face-to-face, so at least once per month, reported a higher satisfaction rate with the mentoring experience. So those who met less often actually had a less satisfactory experience with the mentoring program. So I like to emphasize that time together really matters. All relationships require time. And so we want to emphasize the importance of spending that one-on-one quality time together to build that relationship. You'll find that in most cases, the pairings are going to be much more satisfied with the experience. Next slide. Again, to reiterate some of the benefits of the mentoring program, it expands the network of support for students. Like the African proverb, you know, it takes a village. One person can't be all things to one student, and so having this mentoring program helps expand the students' network on a college campus in a more personal way. It also provides additional role models and social capital for the student to achieve their goal. So the personal mentor is able to interact with the student in a way that maybe a professional staff member cannot interact with. And so it just gives that student that additional personal support, and this person can serve as an important role model to the student. Last, you know, the mentoring program and the mentors help students navigate the college experience together. Angela talked about before how the mentors and the program staff kind of tag team to support the student. I think that's really important. Mentors are going to learn things and do things with students that the staff cannot do, and the staff will have access to provide support to students that maybe the mentor cannot do. And so together, it creates this wonderful kind of tag team that can help the student achieve their goals. I'll give you a clear example. We've had a student that maybe was struggling with some depression, and the mentor called my office and said, hey, I noticed so-and-so is struggling. We were meeting quite frequently, and now I'm not able to get in contact with this person. The last time I saw them, they seemed really down. Wondering if you have noticed or seen anything. And so with that notification from the mentor, we were able to reach out to the student, and find out what the issue was, how can we support the student. But without those extra pair of eyes and ears, that would have been maybe a little more difficult. And so that's an example of how like mentors and staff can work together to help students navigate personal life and the college experience so that we can get the student on to graduation. Next slide. And so just a few words. We had a lot of information today, and there's 4 primary takeaways that we hope that you get from this webinar today. And one is around budget. Laban scholars and Renaissance scholars are both very fortunate to have a budget, but honestly, you can do this program on any budget or none at all. You can use a lot of technology to disseminate information and get things done, but we realize that every program is different, and so don't let budget stand in the way of launching your program. Next, I would say training is a critical component of setting your mentors up for success. I would say that's a must-have in the development of your mentoring program to make sure that the mentors are informed about who this community of students are and how to best support them. I think there are a lot of people who come into the mentoring experience with wonderful intentions, but maybe not fully informed about who and how to best serve the student population. And so I think to set up a successful program, training is really that critical piece. Next, make it your own. Every program is going to be different. We shared a couple examples with you today, but make this program your own, and it's going to be different based on your campus climate, the allocation of resources for your program, but most importantly, your students' needs. I think even before launching a program, this is something we did. We administered a survey and did some focus groups and really tried to learn about, 1, did students want this mentoring program? And 2, what did they hope to gain from it? And so really get the input of your student in consideration with some of the other factors on your campus and your resources. And then last but not least, emphasize that time together matters. I think we all know that relationships and good relationships take time. So emphasize the importance of your mentors spending time together on a regular basis throughout the design of your program. And so I think if you have some of those key components in place, you guys will be very successful. And I look forward to hearing about all the great success that you all will have as you launch your mentoring program. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Carrie.
Okay, so we do have some questions. Our first question is, do you have a formal assessment tool for collecting data and the mentoring program that you can share?
So this is Kizzy. I do have an assessment tool. It's not very extensive, but I'm happy to share it with anyone who's interested in using it as a starting point for their assessment.
Okay. The next question is, did you disaggregate your findings based on frequency and impact?
So at Fresno State, we did. But I did not share that in this webinar, but we did.
Okay. Is there also, regarding the assessment tool that's available, or did you say that it was available in like PDF format that we could share?
I can transfer it over to a PDF and share it with you, yes.
Okay, so just so that everyone listening knows, there will be a recording available of the webinar, and then a PowerPoint available, and then we'll also include that assessment tool on our library page with all of that. The next question is, how do you keep your mentors engaged, especially if they're still waiting on a mentor match?
So, Angela, did you want to answer this, or Jamie? I'm happy to, but wanted to give you all an opportunity.
Yeah, so like we mentioned a little bit in some of the mentor recruitment, is that it's possible that a mentor would be recruited and wouldn't be matched in their first year. At one point, I believe we had maybe 30 mentors in our pool, and I think more recently Blair said maybe that she had about 50 or more waiting for matches. And so we certainly want to maintain that energy and also start getting them some exposure to working with students and working with our specific student population. And so some of the ways that we do that is utilizing volunteers, prospective mentors as volunteers for different programs, for different needs that students might have. Maybe that's transportation around town or unique things. Maybe it's getting some driver's education hours. You know, folks are willing to assist with those sorts of things, or other donations to the program. If your program has maybe a food bank component or some commonly used personal care items, maybe they're willing to have a collection box in their office on campus or in the community, and then utilizing them as presenters. So I mentioned maybe on one occasion, you know, that we had a mentor match or an individual that wanted to be matched that maybe worked in study abroad or worked in financial aid, worked in academic advising. And so using those folks to come on in and maybe do different presentation workshops for your students to start building that relationship, and also utilizing the skill set and information they bring as a mentor to the larger student group that you have to really draw on those resources.
Okay, we have another comment where someone is interested to also get a copy of the mentor application. Would something like that also be available to distribute?
The mentor.
Go ahead.
The mentor application for the Blaven program, I could check with their current program director, and if they're willing to share that, we can certainly make that available.
Okay, thank you.
Fresno State can make that available as well, and we also have it on our website, and so I can share both formats with you.
Great. Okay, next question. What are some tips for implementing a mentor program with little or no budget?
If you don't mind, I don't mind sharing that piece of information. Our very first year, we had a budget of $3,000, and then the second year, it got cut in half. And so one of the ways in which to cut down the budget is to, if you do community meetings, do them later in the afternoon, because maybe when we did it at lunchtime, it was much more expensive. People were expecting lunch, versus if we did we do monthly mentoring meetups is what we call it. And so we do it later in the afternoon, around 3:30 to 4:30, right before staff or faculty may be heading home for the day. And later in the afternoon, we find that less students have classes, and then people are not expecting as much of a meal. The other thing I would say is you don't always have to meet in person if the budget doesn't allow. I think there's ways to engage in other forms of communities, like through online social media platforms, email. Maybe your school has some type of electronic online platform that you guys can engage in, or disseminating training information on a regular basis. So I think there are ways to be creative using electronic mediums when budget is not abundant or non-existent.
Okay, I do realize we're close on time, but I want to at least do one more question. What is the staff time commitment for starting and running a mentoring program, and how do programs with limited staff handle the time commitment to implementing a mentoring program?
So I think there can be some fluctuation or variation on that based on the staff time. So in terms of thinking about how often you check in with the mentors and mentees, you know, the Blaven program does that on a monthly basis at least, but if you're doing that less frequently, the time commitment could be less. And then in terms of if you're holding existing events, are there ways to, for your current students, are there ways to have mentors at that and make it kind of a mentor-mentee event? So you're not then having to host separate Nixer social events for them? Or do you put the, you know, onus for that connection really on the staff person? We do brief mentor match meetings where we sit down with the mentor and the student to kick off that match. I think that that's pretty important, even if it is, just 10 minutes kind of covering, okay, here's who you are, maybe after a speed match event, and, what are some of your boundaries and expectations. So I'm trying to think of like putting a specific number on it. Kizzy, do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't have a specific number, but we actually use a student worker to coordinate and do a lot of the hands-on, and I supervise it. So it actually, as a professional staff, doesn't take a lot of my time, and it also provides a job for a student. And so it maybe takes a couple hours a week maybe for the student just to prepare the agendas, order the food, update forms. It really doesn't take a lot of time. I would say maybe 4 to 6 hours in the month, but again, we have a student assistant that helps spend a lot of that hands-on time coordinating some of those pieces just with my supervision.
Okay. So as you can see, the presenter contact information is up on your screen. I want to thank all of you so much for joining us today, and thank you so much to the presenters for taking the time to share your expertise with our network. And a recording of the webinar will be available, like I said, up on the website probably within the next hour or two, and then we will also provide you with the documents that you had requested. If you like this content and would like to see it continue, please donate today by visiting our website. And if you have a research study that you're interested in presenting via this series, you can contact me. Thank you again for everybody who joined us today.